The Earth Space Council had never seen anything like it. The summit hall, a vast dome of polished steel and glass, stretched higher than any building in New York or Tokyo. Sunlight reflected off the walls, creating patterns that danced across the floor. Flags of every human nation hung alongside the banners of visiting alien civilizations. Humans bustled around in crisp uniforms and suits, moving with purpose, while strange spacecrafts hovered silently outside, parked in formation for all to see. This was not just a meeting. It was the start of history. Among the alien visitors, one figure drew more attention than the others. She was Liara of the Elorian race, an elegant being with smooth pale skin that shimmered faintly under the light, eyes that glimmered with silver intelligence, and a posture so straight it seemed carved from crystal. Unlike other aliens, whose forms varied in ways that made humans feel both awe and discomfort, Liara's appearance was graceful, almost comforting. Yet there was something intimidating about her calm, controlled demeanor. Humans had long speculated about the Elorians, and now they were here, walking among them. The Elorians were known across the galaxy for their intellect, for their ability to process information faster than any human mind. They had no known emotions, at least none that humans could detect. They rarely spoke about feelings, and their faces remained nearly motionless in every situation. The mere fact that an Elorian was attending the summit personally signaled the importance of Earth and galactic affairs. Liara's presence was not ceremonial. Every movement she made, every gesture, carried weight. As the delegates moved through the hall, Earth's ambassador, a tall woman named Clara Jensen, approached Liara with a calm smile. Clara was proud of her people and excited to present a part of human culture that she believed could connect worlds. She guided Liara to a long table covered with items that represented humanity's creativity and history. There were paintings of landscapes and portraits, sculptures from bronze to marble, and a small display of human tools, each crafted with care. But what caught Clara's attention most, and what she hoped would capture Liara's curiosity, was a simple plate of chocolate chip cookies. Liara's silver eyes scanned the table with slow precision. She examined the sculptures first, tracing the outlines of human form with her gaze, noting every detail, every curve. She observed the paintings, tilting her head slightly as she considered how humans used color and perspective. She touched nothing. Her long fingers hovered above the objects but never made contact. Humans whispered among themselves, speculating whether she understood art at all, whether she appreciated it or merely analyzed it for its structure. Finally, her gaze fell on the plate of cookies. The cookies were ordinary to humans, each golden brown with soft centers and chocolate chips that glistened slightly under the light. To Liara, they were curious objects, small and round. But unlike the tools in art, they were not designed for analysis. They were for consumption, for enjoyment. She did not eat, but she stared at them with a curiosity that the humans had not expected. There was a tension in the room, as if time had slowed, and every person watching could sense that this moment might be important. Clara stepped forward and spoke gently. "Liara, this is a small part of what humans call comfort food. We thought you might like to try it. It is not necessary, of course, but it is something very special to us." Her voice carried warmth, the kind of warmth that humans took for granted but aliens rarely understood. Liara tilted her head slightly, acknowledging Clara's words, but she said nothing. Her expression remained neutral, though her eyes seemed to linger on the cookies longer than any other item. Around them, other aliens whispered in their own languages. Some were curious, others dismissive. The Goran species, known for their robust bodies and mechanical appendages, muttered to each other about the inefficiency of human customs. The Talan, a race of beings made of semi-transparent light, seemed fascinated by Liara's interest. None of them could understand why a small baked item would capture attention in a gathering meant to discuss treaties, technology sharing, and interstellar trade. Humans, on the other hand, leaned in, sensing that this small object might carry significance far beyond its size. Liara moved closer to the plate, her tall frame gliding with a fluidity that seemed almost unreal. She did not reach for a cookie yet, but the motion itself drew every eye. Clara guided her with subtle gestures, indicating that she could take one if she wished. Liara paused, her silver eyes narrowing slightly as she examined a single cookie. She turned it gently in her hand, not touching it with her fingers, but allowing the plate's energy to transmit through subtle magnetic sensors that humans could not see. She studied it as if trying to understand the purpose of the object, its composition, its shape. The humans watching felt a mix of excitement and fear. Could this simple act, trying a cookie, influence an entire interstellar negotiation? Could it change the perception of humans in the eyes of a species that had no known emotions? Some ambassadors quietly speculated that it might. Humans had always taken pride in the small joys of life, the comfort of a meal, the satisfaction of sharing food with friends. Perhaps this was humanity's greatest power, its ability to experience and share emotions in ways that no advanced intellect alone could replicate. Liara's presence at the summit was already a signal to the galaxy. Her curiosity about a cookie was something else entirely. It suggested that she could be affected by human culture, that even a mind as advanced as hers could encounter something completely new and unexpected. Clara felt a flutter of hope. If an Aelorian could experience joy even briefly, the possibilities for peace, understanding, and collaboration were endless. Other humans approached the table offering explanations. "It's sweet," a young boy said shyly. "It's made with sugar and chocolate. People like it because it makes them happy." Liara turned her gaze toward him briefly, almost as if acknowledging his words, and then returned to the cookie. She did not speak, and yet the room felt filled with tension and anticipation. Every person present waited for a reaction that no one could predict. For Liara, this was a moment unlike any other. In her society, experiences were catalogued, processed, and evaluated, but never savored. There was no word for pleasure, no thought of enjoying something purely for its own sake. Yet here in the heart of a human city, surrounded by beings who thrived on connection and emotion, she faced an object that challenged everything she had known. The cookie was small, but it represented something immense, a window into the human way of life, a glimpse of joy, warmth, and connection. Time seemed to stretch. Humans held their breath. Aliens waited in silent judgment. Liara did not move to eat yet, but her attention on the cookie created a quiet anticipation that none had expected. It was as if the room itself recognized that this was a turning point, the beginning of a story that would not just be about politics, technology, or treaties, but about understanding life in a way that only humans could offer. The summit continued around her, but Liara's focus remained on the plate of cookies. Clara stepped closer and said softly, "There is no pressure. You can try it if you wish. Humans value this because it is simple, and yet it can bring happiness." Liara considered the words carefully. She had processed thousands of concepts, analyzed countless objects, and studied human culture extensively. Yet she had never encountered an object designed purely to provide pleasure. Her silver eyes reflected the light of the summit hall, and for the first time, a trace of something human, curiosity mixed with wonder, shone within them. The moment held, stretched, and became almost sacred. Liara's attention was not just on the cookie, but on the possibility of discovery, the unknown sensation that could follow. The humans around her realized that something extraordinary was about to happen, something that could change the way aliens saw humanity forever. The air in the hall was filled with anticipation, a mix of excitement, awe, and uncertainty. And so, Liara stood before the plate of cookies, tall and poised, a being from a distant world, on the verge of experiencing something entirely new. She had not yet taken a bite, but the world waited. Humans, aliens, and even observers from distant galaxies sensed the importance of this moment. What would happen when she finally tried the cookie? The answer remained unknown, but one thing was certain. Life at the summit would never be the same again. The summit hall had fallen silent. All eyes were on Liara, the tall Aelorian woman, as she hovered near the small plate of cookies. Even the distant hum of hovering spacecrafts outside seemed to fade, leaving only the anticipation of what was about to happen. The humans held their breath, some gripping their notes or tapping their fingers nervously, while other aliens exchanged confused glances. What could be so important about a simple cookie? Liara extended her hand toward the plate. Her long fingers hovered just above the golden brown treat, perfectly poised, precise, and careful. She had examined thousands of objects in her life, technological devices, complex machinery, even rare minerals from across the galaxy. But none had captured her attention like this. It was not merely the shape or color of the cookie. It was the concept, the purpose, the intention behind it. Humans had created something to bring happiness, something to be enjoyed. That idea itself was foreign to her, yet fascinating. Clara Jensen, the Earth ambassador, smiled gently. Take it if you wish, Liara, there is no pressure. This is simply a way we share a small piece of our culture. Her voice was calm, warm, and patient. Liara tilted her head slightly, acknowledging the invitation. Her silver eyes reflected a glimmer of curiosity that no one had ever seen before. Even the other Aelorians in the room leaned slightly forward, intrigued by what they could not yet understand. Slowly, deliberately, Liara picked up a single cookie. She held it carefully, examining it from every angle. To a human, it seemed like nothing more than a small, round biscuit with chocolate chips. To Liara, however, it was a mystery. She analyzed the texture, the shape, the way the chocolate chips were slightly raised above the dough. Her internal processors worked quickly, evaluating what chemicals and structures could create such an object. But even her calculations could not fully explain the sensation that began to stir within her. The room remained still. No one dared speak or move. Even the robotic aides stationed around the hall seemed to pause. The tension was tangible, a thin layer of energy that seemed to vibrate in the air. Humans whispered softly to each other, their excitement growing. "Will she actually eat it?" one young diplomat asked. Another shook his head, unable to look away. Liara brought the cookie to her lips. There was a moment of hesitation, a pause that stretched longer than anyone expected. Then carefully she took a small bite. The sound was soft, almost imperceptible, but it echoed through the room like a bell. The humans gasped quietly. Some of the alien delegates tilted their heads in curiosity. Others remained neutral, but every being present felt the importance of this first taste. Immediately, Liara froze. Her silver eyes widened, and her usually composed face shifted in a way that humans could barely believe. A subtle curve formed at the corners of her mouth, almost like a smile, though restrained. Her head tilted slightly, and her eyes reflected something humans could recognize instantly: astonishment. She had never experienced anything like this. The sweetness of the cookie, the warmth that spread through her senses, the way the chocolate melted on her tongue. It was unlike anything she had ever processed. Her body, normally calm and controlled, reacted subtly. Her breathing, measured and precise as always, became slightly uneven. Her fingers trembled ever so slightly as she held the cookie. Humans leaned forward in awe, realizing that the reaction was genuine. This was not a programmed response. This was discovery. This was emotion. Liara, the analytical, composed Aelorian, was experiencing something new: joy. A murmur ran through the hall. Some of the human delegates exchanged glances of disbelief, while others smiled quietly. The children present giggled softly, thrilled to see an alien react with such wonder. The older aliens whispered among themselves, intrigued and confused. What did this mean for their society, their culture, their understanding of emotion and experience? One by one, more delegates began to notice subtle changes in Liara's posture and expression. She leaned forward slightly, eyes focused entirely on the cookie in her hand. There was curiosity, wonder, and the faintest hint of delight. Liara took another bite, this time slightly larger. The room seemed to hold its collective breath again. The warmth and flavor of the cookie traveled through her senses in waves. She felt an unfamiliar lightness, a sense of comfort, a connection that went beyond logic. In her world, knowledge was power, calculation was control, and feelings were irrelevant. Yet now Liara was beginning to understand a human truth. Some experiences could not be measured or analyzed, only felt. Humans in the room felt a growing sense of pride. Here was proof, tangible and undeniable, that even the smallest creations of their species could inspire wonder in beings far older, wiser, and more advanced than themselves. A simple cookie had broken barriers that words, machines, or treaties could never reach. For the first time in recorded history, a human snack had caused a being from another world to display emotion openly. Liara's fascination grew with every bite. She examined the texture of the cookie, the way it crumbled slightly in her hand, the warmth of the chocolate chips as they melted. Each detail was a discovery. Each sensation was a lesson. Her normally precise mind raced to categorize the experience, to understand its chemical structure and potential effects. Yet she found herself distracted by something she could not name. It was not taste alone nor texture alone. It was a combination of sensations, thoughts, and something deeper, an awareness of joy. The other Aelorians watched in silence. Some whispered to each other in their melodic language, debating whether to intervene or observe. Their society did not forbid such experiences, but it did not encourage them either. To witness one of their own display emotions so clearly was unprecedented. Lyra, however, seemed unaware of the attention. Her focus was entirely on the cookie and the new sensations it offered. Clara Jensen stepped closer, her eyes reflecting pride and hope. "Do you like it, Liara?" she asked gently. Liara paused for a moment, considering the question. Then she nodded subtly, a movement small but powerful in its significance. Her silver eyes shone, and for the first time the human saw a spark of recognition, that this simple act had meaning far beyond flavor or sustenance. It was connection. It was understanding. Liara continued to eat, carefully savoring each bite. With every piece, the humans noticed subtle changes. Her posture relaxed slightly, her gaze softened, and her expression became more animated. There was no doubt that she was experiencing a sensation unique to humans, a delight that could not be captured in words or formulas. She was learning something her species had long ignored, the value of simple pleasures and the way they could bring joy. Other aliens began to react as well. Some leaned closer, curious about what had caused Liara's unexpected display. A few Goran, normally dismissive of human culture, tilted their heads and observed with interest. Even the Talan, who had always been intrigued by light and emotion, seemed to brighten in response. Slowly, the room became a mixture of wonder, curiosity, and quiet excitement. Humans whispered to each other, unable to contain their pride. "She's enjoying it," one said. "She really is." Another shook his head in amazement. All this technology, all these negotiations, and a simple cookie is what opened her mind. It was a moment of triumph, not just for Clara or the delegation, but for humanity itself. They realized that even in a universe filled with advanced civilizations, intelligence alone could not match the power of simple joy and kindness. Liara took the last small piece of cookie, savoring it with the same careful attention as the first. Her expression softened fully now, and she let out a quiet, almost musical hum, a sound that carried subtle emotion. Humans smiled, children giggled, and even some aliens could not hide their fascination. Liara had crossed a threshold, experiencing the unfamiliar in a way that no Elorian had done before. As she placed the empty cookie plate back on the table, she looked around the room. Her silver eyes reflected understanding, awareness, and a spark of delight. She had discovered something important. Humans had a gift, a unique way of connecting with the universe that went beyond intellect or skill. Their creations, no matter how simple, carried emotion, memory, and joy. And now, Liara knew that this gift was something worth learning, experiencing, and sharing. The room remained quiet for a moment, as if holding its breath, and then slowly, applause began. First a few hands, then more, until the hall echoed with the sound of appreciation. Humans beamed with pride, and some aliens even clapped their claws or limbs in recognition. Liara's simple act of tasting a cookie had transformed the atmosphere. It was a moment that would be remembered, a story that would be told for generations. Liara herself remained calm, though inside, her thoughts raced. She had never imagined that a being could express joy so freely, that a flavor could evoke such reaction, or that something so ordinary could carry such meaning. She had learned that humans were special, not because of their technology, nor their strength, nor their knowledge, but because they could create, share, and feel in ways that changed the universe quietly, deeply, and permanently. The summit hall had returned to its normal rhythm, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Humans and aliens alike whispered in quiet tones, replaying the moment when Liara, the elegant Elorian, had tasted her first cookie. The image of her silver eyes widening and the subtle curve of a smile was etched into the memory of every observer. What had been meant as a simple cultural gesture had unexpectedly caused a ripple, one that spread far beyond the small plate of cookies. The human delegates were buzzing with excitement. They had hoped that Liara might find something interesting in their culture, but no one expected this reaction. Clara Jensen, the Earth ambassador, walked among her colleagues with a proud smile. She whispered softly, "Do you realize what just happened?" She felt joy, and Elorian for the first time felt happiness in a way we can understand. Around her, the other humans nodded. They had always known that human emotions were powerful, but seeing them reflected in an alien being made the truth undeniable. Liara herself stood slightly apart from the main group. She had returned the empty cookie plate to the table and straightened her posture, her expression composed once more. Yet beneath her calm exterior, her thoughts were a whirlwind. The sensations of the cookie, its sweetness, warmth, and comfort, lingered in her mind. She had never known pleasure could be so layered, so connected to memory, connection, and emotion. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced, and she could not stop thinking about it. The other aliens were watching closely. Some leaned toward each other, their voices soft and melodic, discussing the unexpected development. The Goran, known for their robust frames and logical approach to life, were puzzled. "Why does a single edible object cause such reaction?" one of them asked. "It is not necessary for survival, nor does it provide advantage. Why would she respond so strongly?" The Talon, creatures made of shifting light, were fascinated. They moved closer to the observation area, their forms glowing brighter as they watched Liara's behavior. "It is unusual," one whispered to another. "Her neural patterns are altered, yet not in a way we can measure with standard instruments." "This is pleasure, perhaps?" They had never witnessed such an expression in the Aelorian species before, and they were curious to understand its significance. Humans began to notice other changes as well. Delegates from Earth had brought small plates of different snacks, fruit, pastries, and other familiar foods, to offer to Liara. She approached each plate cautiously, analyzing the shapes, colors, and textures. When she touched a piece of bread, a subtle warmth of curiosity passed through her. When she observed a slice of fruit, her attention lingered, as though she could sense the memories and traditions humans associated with them. Every item she considered seemed to contain a story, a culture, a connection, and she found herself drawn in ways she had never expected. Word spread quickly through the summit hall. Observers from other alien civilizations began to approach the humans' table. They watched Liara with curiosity, trying to understand the cause of her behavior. Some whispered in their native languages, debating whether human culture was dangerous or enlightening. Others, intrigued by the concept of pleasure, quietly sampled a human snack themselves, seeking to understand what Liara had discovered. One of the most surprising reactions came from the Aelorian Council members who had not attended the summit directly. They communicated with Liara remotely, asking for reports on her behavior. When she described the experience, they were unsettled. Pleasure, comfort, and enjoyment were not considered meaningful in their society. They were tools to regulate behavior or to improve efficiency, not to be experienced freely. Yet Liara described the cookie with detail, speaking of warmth, sweetness, and delight. She even admitted that it had sparked a curiosity she could not explain. Meanwhile, humans took careful notes. Scientists among them recorded Liara's responses, her gestures, her expressions, and even the subtle changes in her voice. Psychologists and anthropologists whispered excitedly about the implications. If an Aelorian could feel something akin to joy, it suggested that all intelligent life might be capable of experiencing more than logic and reason. Humanity had always believed its emotional capacity was unique, and now there was proof visible to the galaxy. Liara herself began to reflect on the broader meaning of the experience. She realized that the cookie had done more than provide a new sensation. It had opened a doorway to understanding humanity in ways no lecture, treaty, or technical demonstration could. Humans did not merely exist. They created, they shared, and they experienced life fully. Their emotions were not a weakness but a strength. The simple act of baking a cookie and offering it to another being had created a connection that could bridge civilizations. Some of the younger alien delegates approached Liara cautiously. They had never experienced human culture firsthand and were curious about the reaction. Liara, now more confident, allowed them to observe her interactions with small human snacks. She guided them through the process of examining textures, smells, and flavors. She explained how humans valued these small experiences, how meals were often shared to strengthen bonds, and how a simple cookie could carry meaning far beyond its ingredients. The young aliens listened intently, their curiosity growing with every explanation. Humans began to notice subtle changes in the aliens' attitudes. What had once been skepticism or indifference transformed into curiosity and even admiration. The Goran who had questioned the significance of the cookie now leaned forward, observing more closely. "There is something in this," one muttered. "Perhaps it is more than sustenance. Perhaps it is a form of connection." The Talon, glowing brighter, moved closer to watch Liara demonstrate how humans experienced pleasure in small things. Slowly, the ripple effect of her first taste began to spread. Liara's actions also encouraged discussion among human delegates. Clara Jensen noticed that the reactions of other alien species were not merely scientific, but emotional in their own way. They were experiencing something unfamiliar, something that challenged their assumptions about intelligence, life, and connection. Clara whispered to a colleague, "This is incredible. One cookie, and we've opened minds, hearts, and perhaps even entire cultures. It's a bridge we never imagined." As the summit continued, Liara became increasingly engaged with human culture. She asked questions about ingredients, baking methods, and the history of certain foods. Humans explained patiently, sometimes demonstrating how dough was mixed or how chocolate chips were folded in. Liara observed each process with careful attention, noting how humans had created systems that were practical yet deeply meaningful. She began to understand that the act of making and sharing food was a reflection of human values: care, patience, and joy. Other aliens, encouraged by Liara's engagement, began to participate. A few Talon experimented with tasting fruits while a Goran delegate tried a small pastry. The reactions varied, but the ripple was undeniable. The summit hall, once a space of formal negotiation and observation, had transformed into a place of discovery, learning, and subtle joy. Humans watched with quiet pride, realizing that their culture had an impact that no advanced technology could replicate. Liara continued to taste small human treats throughout the day. With each experience, her understanding of humanity deepened. She noted how humans celebrated together, how meals could be both practical and symbolic, and how something as simple as a cookie could carry emotion, memory, and connection. She began to wonder how her own people had missed such experiences, how they had focused entirely on logic and efficiency while neglecting the richness of life that humans embraced naturally. By evening, the ripple effect had reached beyond the summit hall. Reports from other alien delegates described similar experiences with human culture, noting that small gestures and creations could evoke curiosity, wonder, and even a sense of joy. Humans were no longer just participants in interstellar diplomacy. They were teachers, demonstrating the value of simple pleasures, creativity, and emotional intelligence. The summit, meant to discuss treaties and technology, had transformed into a celebration of life itself. Liara paused to reflect. She realized that the cookie had been only the first step. It had opened her mind to curiosity, enjoyment, and connection. It had shown her that humans possessed a unique strength, one that could influence even the most advanced civilizations. Her thoughts were full of possibilities. What other aspects of human culture might reveal new experiences? What stories, songs, or traditions might offer insights into life and happiness? She felt a spark of anticipation, a drive to explore and understand more. The humans noticed the subtle glow of curiosity in her movements, the way her silver eyes reflected light with renewed energy. They realized that the ripple effect was not just about pleasure, but about inspiration. Liara's reaction had inspired not only herself but other aliens, who began to reconsider their own assumptions about life and experience. Humans had shown that even small gestures, small creations, and simple acts of sharing could have profound consequences across the galaxy. By the end of the day, the summit hall was quiet again, but the atmosphere had shifted permanently. Liara returned to her place among the Alorian delegation, her mind racing with thought and reflection. She had discovered joy. The ripple of Liara's discovery continued to spread across the summit, but not everyone welcomed the change. Within the Alorian delegation, whispers grew louder. Some council members, monitoring remotely, expressed concern. "She is straying from protocol," one remarked, his voice sharp and cold. "Her fascination with human habits may compromise our position. It is unnecessary and disruptive." Others debated whether allowing her to continue experiencing human culture could alter her perception permanently. In Alorian society, feelings were carefully controlled, managed, and rarely explored. To see one of their finest representatives captivated by pleasure and curiosity was alarming. Liara herself felt the tension. She had never experienced conflict between her personal discoveries and her responsibilities. She had tasted the cookie and explored human culture with care and curiosity. But now her own people questioned the value of her actions. Yet she could not deny the profound truth she had experienced. Humans did not merely survive, they lived fully. They expressed joy, shared emotion, and connected with one another in ways her society had long ignored. Liara understood with growing clarity that this knowledge was not frivolous. It was powerful. The summit hall, meanwhile, remained abuzz with discussion. Delegates from other alien races had begun to take notice of the tension within the Elorian ranks. The Goran whispered among themselves, observing the shift in Liara's behavior and wondering how such a small event could cause disagreement among a species renowned for control and precision. The Talon, glowing more brightly than usual, speculated that the human's influence might spread beyond mere curiosity. They debated whether emotional experiences could strengthen alliances, foster understanding, or even enhance cooperation among advanced civilizations. Clara Jensen observed the situation carefully. She understood that Liara's fascination with human culture was now being challenged. If the Aelorian leaders insisted on recalling her or limiting her exposure, the summit could shift from celebration and discovery to tension and conflict. Clara stepped closer to Liara, offering quiet encouragement. "You are doing something extraordinary," she said softly. "You are learning, exploring, and discovering something your people cannot yet see. It is worth the risk." Liara acknowledged her words with a slight nod, her silver eyes reflecting determination. The first challenge came in the form of a formal message from the Aelorian Council. Liara's communicator, a sleek device of polished metal and crystal, vibrated softly. She activated it and received a directive. Return to the Council immediately, cease further exploration of human culture, and report only on observations without personal involvement. The tone was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Liara felt a conflict she had never known. She respected her society, its rules and its traditions, but she could not abandon the insights she had gained. To do so would mean ignoring a truth she could not deny. Liara paused, weighing her options. To comply meant preserving her standing with her people, but suppressing her newfound understanding of humans. To resist meant risking her position and possibly her reputation, but it also allowed her to continue exploring a world rich with emotion, connection, and joy. Her mind worked rapidly, analyzing consequences, probabilities, and outcomes, yet for the first time analysis alone could not provide the answer. She felt something else guiding her: intuition, curiosity, and a sense of purpose that had never been programmed. In a quiet moment, Liara returned to the human table. She picked up another cookie, held it carefully, and studied it. She thought about the warmth it brought, the delight she had felt, and the connection it had created not just between her and humans, but among all who had witnessed her reaction. It was a symbol of something greater, the power of simple joy to inspire, teach, and connect. She realized that her fascination with human culture was not mere indulgence. It was essential understanding. Word of her decision began to circulate subtly through the summit. Some aliens noticed her continued engagement despite the Aelorian directive. Whispers of admiration spread among younger delegates who had already begun exploring human snacks themselves. Many began to recognize the value in Liara's actions. A small ripple, born from curiosity and a simple cookie, had grown into a wave of interest and reflection. Liara decided to act carefully. She began to document her experiences with human culture in a way that was analytical yet honest. She described the taste, texture, and warmth of food, the ways humans celebrated meals and shared joy, and the emotions elicited by simple gestures of care and kindness. She noted patterns in behavior that demonstrated empathy, creativity, and problem-solving. Her observations were meticulous, but they were also personal. For the first time, she included her own reactions, recognizing that these emotions provided valuable insights into human uniqueness. As she compiled her findings, other aliens grew intrigued. A small group of Talon began experimenting with human sweets under her guidance. The Goran took careful notes, attempting to quantify the effects on their own physiology and mental processes. Even some Aelorian observers, initially skeptical, began to question the wisdom of suppressing such experiences. Liara's exploration was no longer private. It was influencing a generation of delegates and observers, spreading curiosity and inspiration across species. One moment in particular marked a turning point. A young Talon delegate, glowing with light, hesitated as she tasted a small pastry. Liara observed her reaction closely. The Talon's form brightened subtly, and she emitted a soft, melodic sound that conveyed wonder and delight. Liara recognized immediately what had happened. Another being, entirely foreign to humans and Aelorians alike, had experienced something profound because of a small human creation. The ripple effect had grown beyond her expectations, demonstrating the power of shared experience to transcend cultural and biological differences. The Aelorian Council grew uneasy. Reports arrived describing Liara's continued engagement with human culture and the influence it had on other delegates. Some council members demanded that she cease immediately, citing concerns about protocol, emotional instability, and the risk of compromising Aelorian principles. Others argued that her actions could provide a unique advantage. Understanding human emotion could strengthen alliances, improve diplomacy, and offer insights that no purely analytical study could achieve. The debate was intense, but it marked the first time in centuries that an Aelorian had openly challenged tradition. Liara herself faced a critical decision. She could return immediately, obeying the council's order and abandoning her exploration, or she could remain, continuing to observe and participate in human culture. She weighed the consequences carefully. Returning would maintain her status and protect her from censure, but it would also prevent her from understanding the deeper connections humans fostered through simple acts of joy. Remaining offered insight, growth, and the chance to bridge worlds, but it carried risk. Ultimately, Liara chose to remain. She stepped forward to the human table and guided the young delegates in tasting and observing human creations. She explained in precise yet thoughtful terms the significance of each item. Humans do not simply eat, she said, her voice calm but firm. They create, they share, and they experience. Each small gesture carries meaning beyond its physical purpose. To understand them, we must not only observe but participate. The humans watching her smiled quietly. Clara Jensen felt a surge of pride. Liara's choice was not rebellion. It was understanding. Humanity had inspired an alien mind to question, to explore, and to value experiences beyond logic and efficiency. The summit, which had begun as a gathering of protocol and negotiation, was transforming into a place of connection and insight, led by the curiosity and courage of one alien woman. As the day progressed, Liara continued her exploration. She observed how humans reacted to shared experiences, how laughter, care, and comfort shaped their interactions, and how even the simplest acts, like offering a cookie, could create profound understanding. Other delegates joined her, experimenting cautiously at first, then with growing curiosity and excitement. The summit hall became a living laboratory of cultural exchange, where joy, empathy, and creativity were studied alongside technology and diplomacy. Liara reflected on the implications of her actions. She realized that her fascination with human culture was not a flaw, nor a distraction. It was a strength. She had discovered that emotional intelligence, creativity, and shared experience could be as powerful as advanced technology or strategy. Humans had achieved what many civilizations could not. They had created a culture that inspired connection, curiosity, and growth across species. By evening, the summit hall had transformed completely. Discussions continued, but the focus had shifted from rules and protocol to discovery, learning, and shared experience. Liara stood among the delegates, confident in her decision. She had chosen understanding over compliance, curiosity over restriction, and insight over fear. The turning point had been reached. Humanity's influence, symbolized by a simple cookie and the joy it sparked, was no longer subtle. It was undeniable. Liara knew that the summit would not end without challenges. Her people might attempt to recall her. Other delegates might question her actions, and new obstacles would arise. Yet she also understood. The summit had reached its final day, yet the atmosphere was unlike anything anyone expected. The Great Hall, once a place of formal discussion, had transformed into a vibrant space of curiosity, learning, and shared experience. Delegates from numerous alien civilizations had gathered around the human tables, observing, experimenting, and engaging in conversations about the small but meaningful creations of humanity. Liara, the elegant Aelorian woman who had started it all with her first taste of a simple cookie, stood at the center of this transformation. Her silver eyes scanned the room with careful attention. She had guided numerous delegates through human snacks, explaining not only the ingredients and preparation methods, but also the significance each item carried. Cookies, pastries, fruit, and bread were not mere sustenance. They were symbols of culture, care, and connection. Liara had learned to communicate this subtle power to beings of entirely different biology and perception. With each explanation, more eyes widened in understanding. More minds opened to the lessons humans had long taken for granted. Some of the Aelorian Council members had arrived in person, traveling swiftly through space to observe the situation directly. They were cautious, their expressions controlled, yet it was impossible to hide the curiosity and concern flickering in their silver eyes. For centuries, Aelorians had maintained strict order, relying on logic and efficiency above all else. Yet here was Liara, defying subtle convention by embracing the human way of experiencing life, and the effects were visible across the hall. Clara Jensen, Earth's ambassador, noticed the tension but remained calm. She had prepared for many outcomes, but this was beyond expectation. Liara's courage and curiosity had sparked a phenomenon no one could have predicted, a true cultural bridge between species. Clara approached Liara quietly. "You have done something extraordinary," she whispered. "You have shown them a part of life they never thought to value." Liara acknowledged the words with a slight nod. She understood that this was not just about taste, emotion, or culture. It was about demonstrating humanity's unique ability to inspire understanding through simple acts of care. The Council's first challenge came as they observed another group of alien delegates trying human pastries. One of the older Aelorians, a senior council member named Vera, approached Liara. "You are risking much by encouraging these interactions," she said in a calm, precise voice. "Our traditions discourage indulgence in emotion or pleasure. Why would you allow this?" Liara considered the question carefully. Her silver eyes reflected both respect and quiet defiance. "Because they are learning," she replied softly. "Human creations, their small acts of sharing and kindness, can teach us about connection, creativity, and understanding. This is not indulgence. This is knowledge. This is insight that no formula or treaty could provide." Her words were measured, yet their impact was undeniable. Vera remained silent for a moment, processing the meaning. She had always valued intellect and precision, but the demonstration unfolding before her eyes revealed something the Aelorian mind had rarely acknowledged: that life was richer when emotion and joy were embraced, not suppressed. As the day continued, the ripple effect Liara had started grew stronger. Aliens of multiple species, initially skeptical, now engaged with human culture, tasting small creations and observing the emotional responses they produced. The Goran, who had been the most logical and dismissive of all delegates, began to understand the concept of connection and joy. The Talon, radiant and expressive, explored new interactions inspired by human traditions. Even some of the Aelorians, hesitant at first, began to see the value in experiencing life beyond calculation and observation. Humans watched in quiet pride. What had started as a small act of sharing cookies had transformed into a demonstration of human uniqueness that no speech, treaty, or technological display could match. Clara Jensen smiled, realizing that the greatest achievement of the summit was not diplomacy in the traditional sense, but the subtle, profound influence of humanity itself. Small gestures, curiosity, and care had become tools more powerful than any weapon or machine. The turning point arrived when Liara invited Vera, the senior council member, to try a cookie herself. At first, Vera hesitated. Her hands were steady, her expression unreadable, but Liara guided her gently, explaining the significance and the intention behind the treat. Slowly, Vera lifted a cookie to her lips. When she tasted it, a shift occurred that stunned the hall. Her silver eyes widened slightly, and the tiniest curve appeared at the edge of her mouth. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. The room erupted in quiet astonishment. Other Aelorians, observing the shift, could not ignore the evidence. Here was proof that emotion and experience could coexist with intellect and tradition. Liara's first bite had sparked a chain reaction, and now it had reached the very core of her society. The ripple effect she had initiated had transformed the perception of humans and their culture across species, creating understanding where there had once been distance and indifference. Encouraged by the results, Liara and the humans continued the demonstrations. Small groups of aliens gathered around the table, experimenting with pastries, bread, and fruit. Laughter, gentle exclamations, and melodic sounds of wonder filled the hall. Delegates shared their observations, compared reactions, and discussed the insights they had gained. Even those who remained skeptical could not deny the undeniable impact of these experiences. Humanity had proven that connection, creativity, and simple joy could inspire change in even the most advanced and disciplined minds. Liara reflected quietly on the progress. She had taken a risk, challenging her own traditions to explore something new. In doing so, she had uncovered a universal truth. Intelligence alone was not enough to understand life fully. Emotion, creativity, and connection were equally vital. Humans, with their simple yet profound expressions of joy, had become teachers, guiding advanced civilizations toward a deeper understanding of existence. The summit's final session brought all delegates together in a large hall, where Liara stood before the assembly. She spoke clearly, her voice calm and confident. "We have witnessed today that life is more than efficiency or knowledge alone. Humans create joy, share connection, and inspire curiosity. We have tasted their culture, observed their intentions, and experienced something that transcends biology and logic. There is value in this. There is power in understanding." Her words resonated deeply. Aliens across species nodded, some in agreement, some in contemplation, but all were affected. The Aelorian council members, who had arrived with hesitation, now listened with attention. The senior member, Vera, who had tasted the cookie herself, stepped forward and spoke. "Liara is correct. We have learned something today that cannot be measured by our instruments or classified in our data. Humans possess a quality that inspires connection, understanding, and growth. This is a lesson we must take seriously." The hall erupted in quiet applause, not only from humans but from delegates of other species. It was a celebration, not of dominance or victory, but of shared insight. Humanity had demonstrated its uniqueness, its ability to inspire, and its capacity to bridge worlds. The small cookie, the simple act of tasting and sharing, had become a symbol of possibility and understanding. As the summit concluded, Liara walked among the tables one final time. Observing the interactions of humans and aliens, she saw laughter, curiosity, and cooperation blossoming across species. She understood now that this was the true power of humanity, not in technology, not in conquest, but in its ability to connect, to create joy, and to inspire others to explore life fully. Clara Jensen approached her and placed a hand gently on Liara's arm. "You have done more than we could have imagined," she said softly. "You have shown them who we are, and more than that, you have shown them how much we can teach." Liara nodded, her silver eyes reflecting gratitude and understanding. She knew that the summit would be remembered not for treaties or agreements, but for a profound lesson in empathy, joy, and connection. The ripple that began with a single cookie had grown into a wave that reached every corner of the hall and beyond. Delegates would carry the experience back to their home planets, sharing stories of a human gift that went beyond intelligence or technology. Liara had proven that curiosity, courage, and the willingness to explore the unknown could change minds and hearts, even across species. As the final farewells were exchanged and spacecrafts lifted into the sky, the humans remained, quietly proud of the impact they had made. Liara walked with them to the edge of the summit grounds, her posture calm but her mind alive with reflection. She had experienced joy, witnessed connection, and understood the value of humanity in a way that would stay with her forever. The story of the first cookie, the first bite, and the first ripple of discovery would be told for generations. Humans had shown that even the simplest acts could inspire wonder, break barriers, and unite worlds. Liara had learned, as had many others, that life's greatest lessons often come not from power or knowledge, but from curiosity, kindness, and the courage to experience something new. And as the sun set over the summit, casting golden light across the hall and the gathering spacecraft, one truth remained clear. Humanity had reminded the galaxy that even